Welcome to the show, buddy. We are live. How you doing, my man?
I am good and excited about today's show. We have a guest who turned $2,500 into 95 grand flipping NFTs.
And
He's
here's the
just
best part. He's only 18 years old.
18 years old, 2,500 into 95 grand flipping NFTs. You hear it. You're going to hear it here first on Goats and the Metaverse. So tune in. But before we jump into that, let's get straight on to what has happened in the last week in the NFT and collectible world. Stanley, why don't you bounce us off with what's hot in the last week?
I'm going to stop you right here, right before we get into that. First, we got to talk about the Goat Vault. You forgot about the Goat Vault?
It's true. It's true. The Goat Vault is already vaulting. It's up over 50% since we kicked it off last week. For those of you who don't remember what the Goat Vault is, it's our way of rewarding our community for subscribing, being part of the show, and getting you into the biggest drops from NFTs to collectibles. Last week, we added 2 elements to the Goat Vault. We added some goats, which we'll talk about more in the show. And we added a Prism autographs pack of cards. And in the past week, we've seen those goats go from a mint price, which we got them in at 0.05 ETH, to today sitting anywhere between 0.75 and 1.5 ETH. We estimate the value now sitting at about $3,200. We invested $2,200. We're up $1,000. We're pretty excited, and we think there's a lot more up to go. And every week we're going to be adding more to the vault. So, Stanley, how do people take part in being part of the winnings of the vault?
Well, first thing you need to do is subscribe. You got to be a subscriber of the show. Once we hit 5,000 subscribers, we're going to open up a vault and randomly give out NFTs from our vault to our subscribers. So if you're watching this, make sure you hit the subscribe button. If you're watching this, make sure you're sharing your social media channels with your community and give them an opportunity to be one of the lucky winners as well. I'm excited. Best part about this is the 2 goats we minted happen to be 2 very rare goats, and hence the reason that price has skyrocketed. And exciting time to be alive in the metaverse, my friend.
When are we going to get goats only hats in the vault?
Let's throw them in right now. Here we go. we got some goat only hats we're going to throw in. These ones are actually limited. We only printed 25 of them. Each one is numbered 1 through 25. We're going to throw in one of these. And
does it come with an NFT?
It does not come with an NFT, but it's a cool hat. Hope you guys like it. We're throwing it in the vault. Throw it in the vault.
Lovely. It's in the vault. All right. What's been happening this week?
Oh, my God. What isn't happening this week? Axie and CryptoPunks still seem to be the goats. Axie, $170 million in sales over the last 7 days, which is absolutely incredible. Those numbers continue to skyrocket. CryptoPunks are showing to be still the OGs in the space as those numbers continue to rise. And, I'm excited to interview Daniel later because that's what he bought. He bought a CryptoPunk. So I'm excited to see why he bought it and the story behind that. Bored Ape floor is up as well. Was hanging around 3 ETH and now is around 4 ETH. So we're starting to see a pattern here. Some of the safer investments, or some of the investments where people believe there's a long-term hold, long-term value in, are starting to continue to rise, which is very, very interesting.
I think we've seen the whole market almost moving upwards. These are the top 13 projects that we have on the screen, and almost all of them are green, barring Art Blocks and VFriends. But what's interesting to see is Meebit out of nowhere climbing 144%, was kind of ignored for a little while and now starting to get mainstream attention again. So we've seen that floor price starting to climb. It's all the way up now to 1.8 ETH. And a reminder for anyone who's not familiar with Meebit, you got them for free if you owned a CryptoPunk. They minted 20,000, the first 10,000 claimable for anyone who owned a punk. And what we can see is that between Meebits and CryptoPunks, there's a small amount of buyers, only 143 buyers on Meebit, on CryptoPunks, 295 on Meebit, but the economy that they're creating is large numbers, 13 million and 6.5 million respectively. What stands out the most for me out of this whole chart is Axie Infinity, $182 million, 78,519 buyers over the past 7 days. Axie is exploding and it's taking the mainstream attention. We're seeing communities growing, and we're going to cover more on Axie in our coming shows. If you aren't familiar with it, we covered it in one of our previous episodes where we brought Gabby Dazan on from YGG, and he spoke about their scholarship program. So be sure to watch that if you want to learn more about Axie.
Yes, absolutely. And one of the things, I think one of the major reasons why Meebits is up is 1,000 ETH sale, which is worth over $2 million. And I think that has to do with a lot of reasons why that low amount of buyers, but a high volume, that's a big time sale. I mean, that kind of right away, Meebits right back on the map. What do you think about that?
As they say in the property game, location, location, location. Do you want to own the most expensive house on the worst street or the cheapest house on the best street? And if you're going with the later analogy, the cheapest house on the best street, Meebit selling for $2.1 million. Should you get into the Meebit's location? Well, it certainly seems like there is a very active collector base that are prepared to pay the premium for some rare Meebits. So I think Meebit Bet was looking a little skeptical. Lava Labs getting a little bit of negative attention on how they went with the drop. Majority of the Meebits still today, for people who bought them, I think they paid about 2.7 ETH on a Dutch auction. So still below on their price. But this is a long-term game. Lava Labs are the OGs with creating CryptoPunks, and there's lots coming out in terms of what can be done in the metaverse worlds, in the 3D worlds with Meebit. So we're seeing some excitement and attention coming back to Meebit land.
Absolutely. What else is happening? What else is happening in the Goatz world? I love talking about Goatz. You know, I do.
Well, as you know, we've got Goats in the vault, and that became possible because Goatz launched last week. So it was no planning on our behalf, although we'd like to take the credit. Goatz had a very successful launch, one of the cleanest mints we've seen. It was an automatic mint, which meant as you purchased your goat and you received it, you already knew what your avatar was, as opposed to being revealed later. There were no hiccups in the process. I collected a few and am proud of the ones that I got. They're pretty exciting. And we saw the price of Goats rise meteorically from a sale price of 0.005 ETH to almost 0.025 a day later. And that got stalled by Beanie, a prominent collector in the space. And we're going to talk about one of his projects coming up next, Punk's Comic, who tweeted that the forge functionality within the Goatz contract is not done on chain, and gave it a little bit of shade. And immediately that stopped the price movement. It slowed down a little bit, but we're still seeing an active community and base. I think there's about 3,000 holders of Goatz, which is a great distribution from a community of 10,000. We're seeing 30% distribution. And I'm quite excited about what's going to come in this Goat collector universe. There's a couple of interesting elements. One of them forging, which basically means you can take two goats, and if there's an attribute that you like out of the two goats that you want to forge into one goat, you're able to take those attributes and forge a new goat with that attribute. It's an interesting dynamic because what it'll do is reduce the supply of goats. So you have 10,000. By forging two, you're going to create a new one. Now you only have 9,999 goats left in the goat universe. What will that do to the price? What will that do to the scarcity of the goats? Will someone go on a strategy of forge, and create, a 10 time down the line lineage of a goat that'll be super rare and super valuable? Hard to say right now, but that's a potential strategy that we'll see some of our collectors doing, and we'll be tracking that and giving you the update on what's working and what we're seeing out of the Goat universe.
And we're seeing that a lot. We're seeing that in Punk's Comics as well. Tomorrow's the big day for Punk's Comic holders. Personally, this is a project that we have invested into. And there you have an opportunity to either burn your Punk's Comic, which basically somewhat similar to forging, right? Now it decreases the amount of comics that are available, or you could stake it. And staking allows holders to accumulate Punk's tokens, keep their NFT, and receive a physical copy. And we believe that most people that are investing into this project are buying more than one, and they're going to kind of take the 50-50 route where they're going to burn 50% of their ownership of one comic and then stake the remaining ones. And the other interesting part about it is once they take a snapshot of all the holders who own a Punk's comic, all the holders that own that will get a free meta hero, which is the next project. So if you happen to buy Punk's comic after this snapshot, you will not be able to own a free meta hero. And once again, more complexities on top of complexities and creative ways to roll out projects to make them more interesting and to make them stand out. And, to continue to elevate the value of these projects. And that's what makes them really intriguing and interesting and makes us collectors continue to buy them or invest in them.
The word of the day, or the word that people are looking at, is what is the utility that we can start generating out of these NFTs. It's no longer just about being a collectible item. It's what can this collectible item do for me as the collector? Does it unlock some kind of membership? Does it give me some access to some kind of future NFT drops, some new airdrops that are coming? What is the utility that can be generated out of this NFT asset? And we're seeing more innovative and ingenuity being brought into the utilities of NFTs. And that's what gets me so excited about this asset class. Is it's not just like a piece of paper collectible card, which I know you're excited about, Stanley, so I'm not going to knock it so much, but that sits on a wall and gives very little utility. If anything, it gives you negative utility. There's a cost to store it, there's a cost to secure it, there's a cost to insure it. Whereas we're seeing with NFTs, there's ability to generate income. You can race your Z horse or your Axie. You can get future airdrops. You get access rights. And this is the type of stuff that's being programmed into these NFTs, which make them so interesting.
Absolutely. But to play devil's advocate, there's a negative component that came out. We saw someone get hacked and lose $40,000 or $45,000 worth of NFTs by clicking on a Google ad, which this person thought was an Google ad for OpenSea, and it was actually a scam that stole their NFTs. And now we're getting into, what happens now? You just lost $40,000, $45,000, and there's no customer service number you could call to file a complaint.
Yeah, and we're seeing more of these. We're seeing MetaMask hacks where you're installing some kind of software and it gives people access to their MetaMask. This particular example, the person thought they were on OpenSea and was signing a signature with OpenSea, but it was obviously the people doing the phishing attempt. And once that NFT is outside of your wallet, it is gone. There is almost no way to retrieve that NFT back. So you really need to be careful with what you're doing. The advice is always to use what's called a cold storage or a hardware wallet, where these NFTs are not sitting on your computer or a software-based wallet. And we'll get into one of our next shows. We'll do a small segment on what are the hardware wallets out there, how to use them, and how to go about making sure that you secure these assets that are worth tens of thousands of dollars, if not more, and make sure that you don't fall victim to one of these hacks.
No, 100%. That is something that 100% needs to be done. Other exciting news in the world, we got more celebs in the NFT space. One that I'm particularly excited about. Myke Tyson the other day changes a Twitter profile to a cool cat, which I thought was cool. But the more exciting news for me as a Zedrun owner, he bought a digital horse. I immediately tweeted to him to see if that new digital horse is going to be in the next Hangover movie instead of his tiger.
I love it.
I have yet to get a response, but Myke, if you're watching or listening, I think it's a great idea and you should 100% do it.
And we're seeing this move now more and more celebrities buying a NFT and changing their avatar. It's interesting to know whether this is going to be a positive thing for the potential NFT asset. Will someone pay more for a cool cat that was once owned by Mike Tyson or Jay-Z or whoever it is? And if that's part of the narrative and story of these NFTs, do they become more valuable? The jury is out. We don't know what's going to happen yet, but we're seeing more celebs starting to use their status as a way of indicating which communities they're supporting and potentially flipping those assets because of the hype around them and participating in some of the upward price movement that their celeb status brings to those communities.
No, absolutely. I wonder if it's going to come to, 6 months from now, 6 years from now, there's going to be no profile pictures, but just the NFTs that you own or the digital art you own.
Well, when I look through my Twitter profile, I would say now 1 in 3 is an actual person. 2 out of 3 is some kind of avatar. So my world and my universe, we're already seeing that NFT avatars are overtaking real life identities. Mine is a ape. So I'm already on that train and we're seeing a lot more.
No, absolutely. Also some other news, Space Jam is coming out with a movie this Saturday with LeBron James. They released 91,000 NFTs featuring characters, including LeBron James. Another interesting, what we're seeing now is every single launch that happens. I mean, Space Jam is a movie of my childhood when Michael Jordan was in the movie. And I know my son is excited for Space Jam with LeBron James. So you have these big cultural moments and there's NFTs that are coming to follow, right? Just like back in the day when something exciting was happening, there was a big movie drop, a big Disney movie. There was, figurines that would come out and you could buy as a kid. Now we're seeing NFTs, and just another positive signs that NFTs are here to stay and are not going anywhere.
And 91,000 was released and sold out within 24 hours. So it was, and there was some technical difficulties that Nifty's, the platform, was running on. So I think they would have even sold out even quicker if they didn't have those challenges. So exciting to see, and we're starting to see more of this type of release combining with content, and expect to see plenty more.
Yeah. Some other exciting drops that happened this past week. Fame Lady Squad dropped on Monday. There was some success there. I think the most exciting part about this project that they have, it's the first all-female dev team. It's an all-female project. Team receives 0% cut on secondary sales. Also very interesting, as taking a completely different approach and monetizing through a different way from what we previously have seen. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. They've also donated a part of their primary sales, $20,000 to the Care Fund, which I think is a great initiative. We saw Gary Vee drop into the Discord, and that's becoming a line. Who's dropping into the Discord and buying up these assets? I think he bought 30 or 40, which accelerated the price floor of these NFTs of the Fame Lady Squad. And Gary Vee announced today his launch of his new company, which is helping IP holders turn that IP into NFT. So he's become a very prominent and active member of the NFT community.
And Budweiser being his first client who signed on with him to launch NFTs.
I wonder if Budweiser saw Stella sponsoring Zed and said, we got to do something here. And that was maybe the instigation that got them to contact Gary and say, Gary, what can we do here?
No, that's a good point. Other collection news before we get to our man Daniel. A video game sold for $1.5 million.
1.5 million. I remember playing Super Mario 64 and chucking out that cartridge after I played it. My mom was cleaning my room and said, do you need this stuff? And I said, no, it's junk. And now $1.56 million for a unopened, sealed Super Mario 64 game cartridge. What do you think about that?
Well, I think the crazy part is what you said, right? It's unopened. How many people actually unopen their video games? Mm-hmm. What kid in their right mind would get a video game and not open it, right? So that's what makes them so rare and so scarce. One, you had to keep it unopened. Two, you had to keep it in perfect condition. And three, you still had to hold on to it, right? So this is why we're seeing the value of these, because how many of these really exist in the world? From the collectors I talk to, very, very few. And some other exciting news in the video game space, in the collecting of video game space, WATA Games, which is the grading body that grades video games, just got bought out. It was actually announced today by PSA, which is the big player in the sports card grading world. So once again, these companies are continuing to invest and double down on collectibles. Even though we see the card market has a dip, the video game market is continuing to rise. And we had Darren on the show last week who was talking about tickets and VHS tapes. What's next? What's going to be the next big thing that's going to continue to rise in the collectibles world? And I think the story of it, what we always talk about, you and I, is always something that continues to come up. So for any of you collectors out there that are looking to invest into whether it's physical collectibles or NFTs, pay attention to the story and make sure that story resonates with you. One last piece before we get to Daniel. A Mickey Mantle PSA 10 sports card was on display at the baseball all-star game this past weekend. Video of armored cars and police dropping off this card at the stadium. People talk about this card being worth anywhere between $10 to $20 million. Some people say it's worth a lot more than that. Reason being, there's only 3 of them in the world that exist in the PSA 10, and I doubt anybody's going to sell it. These are the collectors that own these types of things are going to take it with them to their grave, pass it on to their children, and the speculation of what is that card really worth is going to continue to be discussed. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe one of these guys will put it on the market, but they'll definitely break whatever record that exists by a lot.
Our life's work won't be complete until we have that card in the Goat Vault, so that we can all be winners of Mickey Mantle and his legacy, and bring that card to our community.
Oh my God! Wow. All right, it's a lot of work. Got a good start.
We're in it for the long haul.
I love it. Well, I'm excited. This is an exciting interview. This is somebody that we came across, who documented his journey through Twitter. We're gonna add Daniel on, and I think one of the most exciting parts about it is he chose to be his avatar is a CryptoPunk and requested that he does an entire interview as this CryptoPunk. And why would we say no? Right? Like we discussed, should we all do it with our CryptoPunk? But we said, you know what? People want to see our beautiful faces, so we're gonna be on video.
Mine especially, yeah.
But Daniel, welcome to the show, my brother. How are you?
Good. Thanks for having me.
The pleasure is all ours. Would love to hear your story. Tell us a little bit about you and your journey.
Okay, so I started learning about Top Shot probably in February. I turned 18 in December, so kind of a flash, and I could finally sign up for one, but then signups were closed for a while. I kept checking, and it was still closed. I couldn't sign up. Felt like I was missing out. And eventually it opened, and the cheapest moment was like a $50 King Birch moment, I think. Some very common moment, right? And it was $50, which is kind of a lot for something that has 30,000 or however many moments it had. Especially now when you look at the floor, I don't even know what the floor is anymore, but probably like what, $4, $3. And I have probably about 22 moments right now. I'm not really doing anything with them. They're kind of just sitting there. Nothing rare. But that's how I kind of started learning about NFTs, was through Top Shot. It's kind of the gateway. And I was following Danny Ukes on Twitter. I don't know if you guys know him. And eventually I was thinking about expanding to like art, right? So there was a project I was looking at. I can't remember its name for some reason. But someone was commenting, it was Danny, he was commenting about how Ghosts seems more promising, right? And he was right about that, obviously, the floor being so high now. But that was my first NFT, and I was completely inexperienced with Ethereum or MetaMask, OpenSea. All of that was completely new, and I had no one to walk me through it, really. So it was quite an experiment to get through that learning curve, I guess. And eventually, I couldn't get that ghost. I couldn't buy one. They were going too fast. They were getting sniped within milliseconds, really. Within a second, it was gone. But there was around like 59, I think, was my ghost. And it was a meme giveaway. It was a meme contest. So I submitted like 10 memes, and one of them finally won. And, you know, the ghost floor was around 1.2 ETH at the time, which is crazy for a pretty new project. It was very original, though. You know, what he's done is amazing. And that's pretty life-changing money for me at the time. You know, it's, what is that? More $5,000, $6,000.
I'm going to cut you off. Let's take a step back. I want to dissect this. I apologize. So you just turned 18. You started buying Top Shots. You won your first real NFT, or I guess one of value, expensive NFT through a meme contest.
Yeah.
All right. Kudos to you. Love to hustle.
Yeah.
What were you like working a job? Were you like working at the, you know, at the local bakery or pumping gas? Like, what were you doing?
So I got my first job at 16, I think. It was at a grocery store as a bagger, trying to save up money. And at the time, you know, I was playing with stocks and options under a custodial account. So I was always trying to hustle really, but that was a little too risky. I was not very good with risk management there. Getting better with that. But I worked at a grocery store for 2 years. And then in February, I basically took a month off just for mental health, to kind of get away from work. I don't really need to work at the time. I was in school. I was dual enrolled. So I have 2 years of college done already. So I was doing school at the same time. And I was working in January, like almost 40 hours a week. Since I just turned 18, that was finally legal. So I was overworked and tired. And I kind of got more involved in Twitter, trying to find new hustles, I guess. And that's kind of what I did there. And I quit my job in March. I quit it in March. I got a new job probably like a month later at Dick's Sporting Goods. And I just quit that one too. So
good for you. Good for you. Quit those jobs. Forget about that. So you buy your first NFT.
A Top Shot moment.
Well, no. Well, Ghosts. What do you go from there? What happens after that?
So after Ghost, I sold it for 1.4 ETH, probably like 48 or 72 hours after I got it. You know, you can't pass up an opportunity like that. So I sold it, and I pulled out 0.7 ETH into my savings. And I said, you know, I have 0.7 ETH. I'm just going to play with it and try to see what happens. And I bought a Voxo Dis, and for 0.5 ETH. And they just completely collapsed after the reveal. You know, like the floor was at 0.1. It was very rough. I decided to cut my losses there. I sold for like 0.15 or 0.17. So I'm already down big, basically. I already blew 0.35 of my 0.7. And for the most part, it was mainly indie projects. But actually, let me back up a little. So the first NFT project that I wanted to buy was a Bored Ape Yacht Club, actually. And I saw the minting. I saw it on my Twitter feed. I was like, I really want to buy it. But for some reason, I don't think I could mint it on mobile. I couldn't figure it out. And no one would help me. Like, I didn't have anyone I could ask really, like, in DMs. So I kind of lost out on that opportunity at the time. But that was where, like, the interest actually really started for me, because that was the first NFT I wanted to buy outside of Top Shot. And it just didn't work out at the time. Bit disappointing.
What was it about the Bored Apes that you wanted, that you saw that made you want to buy it then?
At the time, it just seemed cool. Like, it seemed like the community was forming and everyone was so excited about it. And when people are excited about something, you kind of just want to join in the excitement. I guess that's kind of FOMO, but it's just basically what was being built there was already, you could see it was something special from the minting night, I think. So I really wanted to ape in, and it just didn't work out. Like, I couldn't mint it. I couldn't figure out how to do it. And by the time I basically could, it was basically sold out.
Okay, so you couldn't get the ape, it was sold out, so what did you do?
So then with Ghost, that was like the next step, I guess. I won the giveaway, the Voxo. And then from there, it was a lot of kind of smaller projects. There was Skelly Bits, which I bought for like 0.01 or 0.02, whatever. They were really cheap at the time. And I just flipped them eventually after a month. Like I just held them, the floor went up, I sold. There were Bit Aliens, same story. Nothing too big. There were some art projects that I really enjoyed. Like Halos, that was another art project after Ghosts I got into. I was able to buy my first Halo at 0.2, and I sold for around 1 ETH. So I was able to kind of make my money back. There were Neon Kabukis, which I was able to buy one, probably like sub 20 mint, and I sold it for 0.5 ETH, I think. So that was a very good flip. So those were like the art. I did a lot of indie art projects, Halos, Neon, the Negatives. I've had like 2 of them.
And what's your discovery process here? Because you're mentioning names that our audience has probably never heard of, and you're just saying you went into this, and then you went into this, and then you went into this. How are you finding out about these projects? What's your method to discover all of these projects and then decide this is one I'm going to go into, this is one I'm not going to go into?
So I think a lot of it has to do with just scrolling Twitter. But I did for a very long time. I'm kind of not doing that as much. I want to start doing that again. But I used to just scroll Twitter for, hours every day, looking at what people were talking about, looking what's on people's radar, seeing retweets, kind of seeing if I could connect with the art or if I understand the art, especially with these art projects. It has to be something special. After Ghosts, there were so many knockoffs, so many. Just too many, really. And I try to stay away from those. I don't think they were original. The Neon Kabukis were like the Japanese art style. They were really cool. I don't know if you guys are familiar with them. Oh, really? Okay. So they're actually very cool, but it was a collection of 222 of them. And I bought below the 20th mark. And I expected, with such a large supply, they're going to fall in price. Like people will become detached. It's going to take months for them to sell out all the way, to make the art. So I decided to exit there, and the floor did fall. I think it was around like 0.1 the last time I checked. But it was just a lot of smaller projects that I found on Twitter by following other NFT influencers, just NFT friends. Now my discovery process is a bit different. I kind of check Discords and I DM people a lot. So, if I find something cool from someone else, or if I just happen to stumble upon it on Twitter and I like it, I think it looks promising, I reach out to certain people, basically just say, here's what I found, it looks really cool. They tend to do the same thing back if they find anything. It's kind of just an exchange of information. The network is really important in really flipping NFTs. Like you have to talk to other people to understand what's happening.
So from what I'm hearing is community is important. Following the right people on Twitter, engaging with the community, engaging on the Discord groups, being able to appreciate the art, right, that you're describing, saying, hey, the art was really cool. This is why I got into it. Here's my question. How do you decide when to flip, when to hold? What's your thought process there?
It just depends on the project, really. Certain things I buy into not really thinking about flipping, but then you see like the floor doubles overnight. I take profits where I can, really. So if I see some insane movement, I tend to sell. I don't really care if it's going to keep going up or keep going down. If I have double my, double profits, I'm taking them. A lot of the projects, like you miss out early. I'm trying to think of some. But basically, I tend to buy the floor as it's going up. So there's the Bored Punk Yacht Club, which is a tribute to the Bored Apes and the CryptoPunks. There's 888 of them. The floor was like 0.04 a few weeks ago, right? And within a few hours, there's at 0.15. So I decided I'll buy like 5 of them. That same night, the floor went up to 0.9. There was a guy who came in, just bought a bunch, People started delisting. The floor was basically touching 1 ETH from 0.04 the same day. So obviously I decided to kind of list some. I'm not going to squander that opportunity. I ended up holding one, but I sold it eventually. A lot of it has to do with momentum. Just seeing, if the price is rising and how fast price is falling. I don't really have like a set target. With certain projects I do, like I create a sell price. With Goats, I have an exit strategy to like not dump onto the market. I don't want to do that. I have 130 Goats right now. The goal is not to, dump at one price point and just create a wall. But that's kind of how it is.
So what made you bullish on Goats, for example, as opposed to, a different project? 130 is a pretty decent amount of Goats to own. What made you make that decision?
So on minting date, so a few weeks before they released, I'm going to back up. A few weeks before they released, there was a lot of projects coming out. Bulls on the Block was crazy hyped. Mad Cat Militia, all those projects were very hyped. But even before they launched, I was following Goats. I thought they looked really promising. Their tweets were very at the beginning, they were mysterious. They tweeted once every couple of days. It's kind of just like a cool vibe and atmosphere, I guess. And I wanted to keep track of them, and they kind of didn't release as fast as I thought they would. So it kind of set me off. But then I learned they were starting minting that day. And I was planning on minting some. But then I started minting around 5,000, right? Like the 5,000 mark is when I got in. I wanted to see how fast they were selling. So with minting, like generative art projects, before I mint, I tend to see how fast they're minting. And then
can you explain before you mint what you mean by that, just for people who don't understand?
So with projects, when they come out at a certain time on a certain day, and you basically mint a random, let's say Goat, for example, and sometimes they reveal a week after, or they reveal the next day, or they reveal immediately after. And, minting sometimes takes days. Like it's basically a selling out process. How fast they sell out is what I'm talking about. And if they're selling fast enough, I usually decide to buy a few. Cool Cats, actually, if I just sidetrack real quick, I minted 80 of those as well. Now, I minted them around like 400. I was a very early minter. I just really, after I saw the price change, I minted like 2, I think, before the price change. And then when they dropped the price to 0.02 from 0.06, I decided to just kind of go all in. I minted 80, and then I bought up to 118 total. So I bought, almost 40 on the secondary below mint. And I wish I held on to them, but I sold between 0.1 and 0.2, which is okay, decent returns. But going back to Goats is the Forge is just such an innovative concept that we haven't seen in the space yet. A lot of these projects are talking about breeding and whatnot, but we haven't actually seen it except in maybe Zedrun, but not very like the generative art projects. So it's just a really cool concept. And I ended up minting 80, and then I bought, I think, 100 on the secondary post mint. So I had 185 of them. And after watching the podcast that they did with the mint condition, and I seeing Des speak about Goats, I kind of became even more bullish on the team and the concept. The art is cool. I don't think it's anything super special when you compare it to the other cartoonish avatar characters. But I think what could make it stand out is the Forge, the community, what Des is doing with the sandbox, which is very cool, innovative concepts, which is something that's been lacking in all these new projects, I think.
So what we're hearing is the team is important. What we're hearing is you're literally day trading NFTs. You're watching them rise, fall, finding the middle that you feel confident in. And if you're confident in the project, you're buying. You're buying low, selling high, right?
Yeah, I mean, I tend, to flip in and out within a few days max. I don't really hold for longer than, 2 to 3 days most of the time. Goats, I'm planning on holding. I've already been holding them for like 7 days. I traded 22 of them for an ape which I sold for liquidity. It was like a liquidity issue. I didn't want to sell 22 goats, but I needed it for my CryptoPunk. So that's what I did. And I'm very excited because from the start, CryptoPunk was like the holy grail of the NFT space is what I call it. And as a newcomer, I didn't really understand it. I'm starting to understand it more. And I'm just very excited to be part of that community.
So is CryptoPunk a flip? Are you going to be holding it for 3 days like your other NFTs? Or is this something that you think you're going to be holding for the long term? And if it is one or the other, why?
My goal is to hold it for, a few months at least, seeing how it goes. I don't really know exactly where it's going to go, especially with Ethereum being so volatile. But the floor on Punks is moving already, even, with Ethereum falling in value. Ideally, I want to hold it for a year or a few years. That's the goal. But again, if there's an opportunity, like my CryptoPunk, I think in May, had an offer for $94,000 USD. And that's basically double what I paid. So if I have an opportunity like that, I'll most likely take it at the time. But, for now, the plan is to hold.
So what you're saying, everything is for sale at the right price.
Yeah, that's kind of how I've been in and out. I can't get too attached to things. I've tried getting attached, but some things you just have to let it go. I don't know. I've let almost everything go that I've had.
I think
do you not have any regrets? I mean, you got into, an ape that could have sold for, 3, 4, 5, 10 times more, but you flipped it early. How do you deal with looking back and saying, oh shit, if I just held that for another, week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, I could be 5, 10 times my money in some of these assets?
So I think I've owned probably 5 or 6 apes, like different apes throughout my time, at different floors. I think one of the biggest moves I've done that helped me accelerate this NFT journey was the day before or the morning of the kennel announcement, right? We were waiting for an announcement on the Friday. And I was trying to get an ape. I still was not very liquid. I was able to sell almost everything I had. And I had like 1.2 ETH. And I had NFT Theo, which is like a teddy bear. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that project. They kind of halted. I'm planning to restart. But they're really cool. They were selling very fast. And then essentially they had a lot of problems. And they just paused. But I was able to trade all my ETH and 2 punk comics and my teddy bear and just whatever else I had left for an ape to this guy. He was very helpful with that. And after the announcement, the ape floor rose dramatically. So that was like, I made basically 1.5 ETH that day. My biggest start to the flips, I guess, my biggest this is it moment was with craniums. I got out of work and one of my buddies basically messaged me saying, these are selling really fast. You should probably look into buying some. And I minted 10, I think. And then I just saw how fast they were selling and I minted 40 total. And with craniums, it was crazy because, I doubled my money there. And then the same night I sold all of them. I had 0 left really. But I had a bunch of ETH. So I decided to go for one of the most rare ones. And I bought it for 4 ETH. I listed it for 7 ETH and it sold while I was sleeping. So that was kind of this is it moment. I made 3 ETH in 8 hours by sleeping.
And to our audience, even with Ethereum being down today, 3 ETH is still $6,000.
Yeah, it was about there. For sure.
You made $6,000 while sleeping.
Yeah.
I think that's a pretty big ROI on sleeping.
Yeah, it was definitely insane. I mean, I woke up, I was very pumped about it. It was just a crazy moment. Craniums really accelerated me. I don't know how they're doing now. But to answer your question, I know I kind of sidetracked there. I know that's something a lot of people struggle with NFTs, how fast everything moves and how if you could have held this for, a few more hours, you would have made so much more money. I don't have that issue, but I think about it. So with Cool Cats, I could have probably made 100 ETH off of a very small investment if I just held longer, right? I sold most of mine at 0.1. I sold a lot of rares. I had a lot of rares. Could have easily made 60 to 100 ETH off of them. And
if you had more capital behind you, would your strategy be any different?
I don't know. I kind of just learned to take profits. So that's my biggest thing is take profits where you can and kind of don't look back. You never know what's going to happen. Cool Cats could have went to zero the next day. If it wasn't for, the whales and the crypto punks just aping in and buying a bunch. That's kind of what accelerated it all. I just learned there's so much opportunity in the space. You miss out on one thing, there's another thing tomorrow that you can make money on.
Hey man, I applaud you. 18 years old, saying take the profits while you can. As a collector, as an investor, I think we get attached. Personally, I get attached, right? I
struggle. I struggle with selling.
Yeah, I don't want to sell
easy.
anything. Never. It's and even selling at 100x or whatever. What else could it go to? I mean, the fact that you have that mentality and that you're able to get in and out, and the way that you're discussing it, I mean, you're almost built different than everybody else in the space. Kudos to you, man.
So I think the reason I started thinking like that is when I was younger, I told you guys, I started with stocks and options, right? Very early, I think 8th grade, I bought my first $100 of a mutual fund. And I've made some interesting moves there, and I've probably I made some insane returns on options. I had a 600% play in overnight, really. That was just a crazy space. And I ended up losing probably before I turned 18, $25,000 total, which before you're 18, you don't really have $25,000 and you lose it totally. It's kind of devastating. And I didn't lose it at once. It was more like parts, 10,000 here, 5,000 here, 10,000 here, right? And I just couldn't learn my lesson of risk management and taking profits. And I finally learned that. And it's really helped me to kind of not look back and just be happy with what you have, because there's so much opportunity, especially in this space. There's something new every day. There's so many cool people. That's one of my favorite things, is meeting so many cool people so far. Every day I get DM'd and I DM people, and it's just cool to make these connections with people and talk about NFTs and whatever else we talk about.
It's like dating and making money at the same time. That's what
Yeah, it's like the dream. Really living the dream.
So there's one question in the audience that I think is a great question. Do you believe it's a lottery ticket with these kinds of projects? So when you are buying it, are you, is that your thought process, or are you not thinking so deeply about it because you're trying to get in and out?
I don't really think about it like a lottery. I know certain people, that's the reason projects fall with minting, is people kind of just mint 20, expecting to get a legendary or super rare, and they just dump below the mint price if they didn't, or if they got one, right? Because they're breaking even if they got one. So they just dump. I don't really do that, especially when I ape in so hard, right? When I buy 100 of something, it's not really a lottery ticket, because it's a lot of ETH. It's a lot of my capital going into one project. And I strongly believe in that project. I haven't minted thinking about getting a rare. That's not my goal. It's just minting to support the project and the team. For example, Deadheads, right? I minted a few, under 10. And I bought a bunch at 0.1, and I bought some more at 0.15. Gary V pumped it. And I sold most of mine. I sold all of them except one for 0.33, really. Unrevealed, right before the reveal. I just sold them all. I don't play those games, basically. I don't play the lottery. That's not something I do. I kept one because I liked the number, and it turned out it was a rare. It was a 13 trait mummy something. It was really cool, but I sold it immediately after I got it revealed. I don't hold on to things.
And are you buying in the secondary market? So when you maybe miss out on a project, or you mentioned you bought apes at different price floors over time, what do you look for? So is the strategy you're looking for the most rare, most expensive one you can afford? at that point in time, or you're just buying the floor, the cheapest one in that because the floor price is moving up and you're just playing into that momentum? Or are you trying to bring that you want that kind of, you think that this rare bunch within this collection of apes is going to appreciate more than others? How do you think about it from that perspective?
Generally, I've been trying to think about it a little more because I think rares move faster when the floor is picking up. Usually they're kind of like, when the floor is moving, rares stay at the same price level, and eventually they kind of rebound back to what the price should be because the floor is moving and it's not correlated to how the rares are moving. So recently I've just been buying the floors. Like with Goats, post-mint, they fell below the mint price. They were like at 0.03, I think. And that's the time I just bought like 100 floor ones. I just bought the cheapest ones I can. I went on a little shopping spree. I tend to do that with every project. If you believe in a project, I just go with the cheapest because, you expect them to double. You get more than you get for a rare most of the time, is my thought process. But I think certain plays, rares are a good play, especially when they're not moving as fast as they should be. If like the floor is moving upwards and the rares aren't, I think that's a better play, which is something I'm trying to think about more, and then I'll start experimenting with that. But so far, I've been heavily investing in floors for flipping.
So to put that in layman's terms, you're buying whatever the floor is, whatever the bottom price is, and trying to buy as many of them as possible, as opposed to trying to buy something with rare traits that is priced at a higher price point.
Yeah, I've been buying the cheapest thing on the secondary market.
To go to our original analogy in the beginning, you're buying a position in the property price. You're buying the position. You're not necessarily buying the most expensive house.
Yeah,
and you're still making money, right? So I think to our audience who's listening, there's a lot of different strategies to explore, and obviously figure out the right strategy for you as the listener and the investor, and what you can afford to do, and what you feel comfortable doing, and kind of playing around with different strategies based from what I'm hearing works as well, right? Because like you said, you're starting to look into rare as well, correct?
Yeah, so that's something I want to think about in future projects, is because what I'm trying to explain, I don't really know how to explain it, is when the floor is moving upwards, rares tend to just stay flat, right? They're not moving with the floor. So if the floor is moving up 20%, rares are just sitting there. And eventually they get caught up and people start buying the rares. But that's a good play, like catching the rares while they're staying flat. It's something I've been thinking about.
Yeah, that's something I have personally done, and it has worked out. Able to buy an ape where it was a rare ape, but it was sitting just above a floor price. And then as the floor price started to move up, so did the rare ape, and we were able to pick it up ahead of that time. So I definitely.
So you're using the floor price movement as a leading indicator to potential price movements on the more expensive assets that maybe people aren't as on top. They're not by their computer. They don't see that the floor price is moving. It's already listed from 3 days ago or 3 weeks ago. So the person hasn't caught up that this price has moved, and then you're able to scalp it at a better price and then relist it. Is that right?
Basically, yeah, I haven't done that really. Like I said, I've just been buying the cheapest on the secondary. But that's something I've been thinking about for the past few days. Watching Goats, for example, we saw that there. We saw with Cool Cats. With Cool Cats, the rares just sat there while the floor was moving up. And eventually the rares just kind of exploded. And, there's like I had a pink cat, which isn't very rare. I don't even know what that is in rarity, but it's not that rare. And I listed it for 2.5 ETH, kind of just like for funsies. It sold in a night again. I think to the Ghost creator. So that was crazy because, I've connected with him personally, but it was a very cute cat. It was like a heart sweater with a halo and the 3 eyes. It just had good vibes. So I listed at 2.5 ETH, kind of expecting it to sell, kind of not. It's very expensive for what it is, but it turned out well. And generally I do buy the floors. Floors are kind of like a good investment if you really believe in the project, because you expect them to go up and you can buy a lot more than rares.
We've got a question from Carson Lepert asking, what's your recommendation when starting out?
That's very broad. The two biggest things, I guess, would be to not play with more than you can afford to play with. I know some people are constantly liquidating to pay bills, for example, or payments for rent, cars, etc. Don't do that. Like, just stick with your play money and make sure it's affordable for you. Don't overextend yourself and put personal money or savings money into this. That's a big thing of advice, I would say, because that's something a lot of people struggle with in this space. They overextend themselves and then they're trying to find money and they just have to liquidate everything. And they're in a bad spot, right? I would avoid that. I would go with your gut, really go with your gut. Like, my gut has been very good to me. I was going to mint 5 ETH worth of Misfits, and seeing their launch really be derailed, it just was not a good, smooth launch. I decided to not mint any, thankfully. Although I am very proud of how the team handled things. I really like the project, but it just didn't work out how I expected it to. But your gut will not lie to you if you just learn to listen to it. Don't overextend yourself. Talk to other people. That's the biggest thing.
Good sound advice. And to piggyback off that question, I mean, what does the future of NFTs look like, right? On one side of it, I love the advice, don't overextend yourself, right? I think we're seeing some of that in the card community where people took out loans to buy cards and now the market dipped and, people have to basically take pennies on the dollar. But are you bullish on the future of NFTs?
So that's a hard question. So I'm not very extremely bullish because I think it's a very new concept, right? I do think it has a lot of potential in real world use cases. So I was in a Discord with a few people and we were talking about this. And essentially, we think, mortgages and, a big thing is concert tickets, seeing who was at a game or who's at a concert. Those are actually use cases, right? That's kind of where I think the future of NFTs are. CryptoPunks will always be a collectible. That's kind of the value. I don't really think of it as a profile pick. I'm using it as one because I'm just very proud of that accomplishment. And I think mine looks pretty cool. But they're like the collectible, right? They're the holy grail. They're just going to exist. As long as NFTs exist, they'll be the king, is my opinion. I don't think avatar projects are sustainable. You can already see them fizzling out slowly, right? There's only a few winners. I do think there's going to be multiple winners, right? Some people think there's only going to be, the punks and the apes. I think there's going to be tiers. So, the expensive tiers, the punks, the medium tiers, the apes, and there's going to be, 3 to 5 lower tiers, whether that's gutter cats, goats, yetis, whatever else, right? So there's a lot of room for winners, but avatars are not sustainable. That's not really what I think NFTs should be used for. Although I do think it's a good social identity. So Beanie was talking about, basically it's a bubble. And I agree. I think avatar projects are a bubble. I don't know where all this money is coming from. People are finding so much money for these projects, and I have no idea where it's coming from. But it's a bubble that will pop. So it's good to kind of hedge your bets, take your money where you can, take your profits, and kind of reinvest it into solidified projects. So we kind of see that happening with punks, right? For me, for example, I flipped and all my profits really went back into punks, which is what they expect to see. I think the same thing is happening with apes, punks. People are flipping from these smaller projects to get into more stable and established projects.
And do you think flipping into a punk is a more stable and safe bet than flipping into ETH? So you're using a punk as your store of value as opposed to just holding in Ethereum.
So that's something I considered. I think punks are a good store of value. I think it's the same thing as holding ETH. That's why I decided with a punk. To me, it's just seeing the past performance, even though the run-up has been insane. I don't know if it's sustainable, but I think long-term it is very sustainable, especially if the NFT future is kind of going where we all think it's going to go. Punks will continue to rise exponentially because it is the icon, really, right? We can agree on that. It's the iconic NFT. And that's just kind of my belief. I think it's a good store of value of Ethereum. So it's the same thing as me. Like I spent 21.25 ETH on my punk. I think if I held, it's just gonna store value. I think the punk community thinks the same thing. I talked to them about it, and they basically say the same thing. It's basically a good store of value of Ethereum. You're not going into punks rather than Ethereum. You're kind of just going in with both.
I agree.
Yeah.
What do you think, Yossi? You agree?
We'll see. You bought a punk. You bought a punk 3 months ago and traded out of your ETH. You would have been down on the money. So I suppose it depends on your timeline on that thesis. If punks holds the OG status, I agree with Daniel that it's and NFTs become iconic collector's items. They are the OG. There are people trying to position it as punks are like the Bitcoin network. Not much happens on it. It hasn't changed much, but it's the OG, the first, whereas apes and these other projects is like Ethereum, where all this new activity and building and rights and everything is happening there. So it'll be interesting to see how those narratives play out. But as a fellow punk holder myself, and I have a few, I'm obviously a believer in the long-term game of it. Will it outperform ETH is the question that's on all of our minds. But I think, Daniel, really incredible story. Really interesting to see how you've traded your way in a short space of time, which is a message to everyone that you're not too late. You got into the game not even 6 months ago or just over 6 months ago. This industry is extremely small. It's extremely nascent, and new projects are coming out all the time. And there are opportunities to be a long-term collector, a short-term trader, a speculator, and everything in between. So I think it's really interesting to see how that has played out. So to end off with, what's next for you? How do you see this playing out for the next 6 months, year? Is this now the thing you're doing full time? What's next for Daniel?
I plan to kind of just piggyback off of Goats for now. It's kind of where all my eggs are. I'm still a very strong believer. I watched the second podcast on Mint Condition yesterday before bed. Des is very passionate, and he's very smart, right? Like he's a smart guy and he knows what makes a project succeed, I think. And you're supporting the team, you're supporting the community. The community is really forming together. It's still very new. I think the project is 6 days old now. Not even a week old, right? It's brand new. We already have like 2,450 holders, I believe, and only 1,600 minted. So we've seen a lot of growth there, which is crazy. It's very good for the community. I plan to pull out more money from Goats eventually to my savings in USD. I'm going to college these next 2 years. So I'm trying to fund my way where I don't have to work through that because I don't enjoy working for other people. So I'm going to be trying to kind of just set that aside and just live my life doing this for now. Holding my punk longer term. Obviously, there's an opportunity to sell for $100,000. I will take it. But for now, I still am a big believer, and I think this is the best long-term hold in NFT space.
Awesome, man. We appreciate your time. Love hearing your story. Love to see you living the American dream of making money, trading NFTs. It's really incredible. And I mean, I think the fact that you're 18 years old or just turned 18 and that you're able to do it. And my biggest takeaway from this conversation is you saying always take profits, right? Don't get connected. Don't worry about FOMO. And I think that, your mentality on this is completely different than everybody else's. Most of the people are waiting to try to sell at the top, right? Or if they are selling, they have another one or something like that. And you're saying, I don't really care. I just want to take my profits and move on to the next project. And that just tells me that you're always going to be ahead of the curve, and you're going to do quite all right for yourself. So I appreciate your time. We loved your story, and we look forward to continue to follow your journey.
And to bring you back on the show.
Yeah,
that'd be awesome, guys.
Can't wait to
Thanks
see you again. Thanks for your time, man, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right, sounds good. Have a good one, guys. Thank you again.
I think he's a lot smarter than you and I. That's all I have to say.
I mean, that goes without saying. Really interesting and spectacular journey, and I have no doubt will continue. I'm going to start tracking his wallet and seeing which projects he's coming into. One of the advantages that you have as being in this game is wallets are transparent.
But here's the thing: he's moving so fast. You might miss a beat, man. You gotta.
That's okay. I don't need to front run him. I just need to buy on his flip, and I'll be the holder in the equation. You know, he's the trader. I'm the hodler. We'll see. We'll see how that strategy plays out for us both. You need both in this market. If everyone's just flipping, then you're going to see these things die very quickly, and you need people who are long-term believers and holders, like he is with Goatz. We'll see how long he holds on that equation, and he is with his punk. So incredible to see. I learned a fortune. I hope our audience did too. But what I loved the most about it was he memed his way into his Ghost NFT. So you have the same opportunity here with the Goat Vault to subscribe to our channel and meme your way. Well, not even meme your way. We make it even easier. Just subscribe to our channel and you have the opportunity to win one of the NFTs that will be in the Goat Vault. Right now, we're sitting with 2 goats, and you heard from Daniel. He's a long-term believer that this is going to be an epic project that's going to appreciate in time. And we're going to be adding more to the vault as the weeks go by and we participate in more of those drops. Stanley, Final thoughts from your side?
Every week we just learn such exciting things, and I'm going to go and completely reevaluate my buying selling strategy. I'm inspired by Daniel. I'm selling everything. Anybody interested in NFTs, call me. I'm just joking. It was a great show. As always, we learn new things. And for our audience, don't forget to subscribe. I see a lot of questions in the comments asking questions that could help us indicate that you're new to the space and want to learn more. And one of the things that Yossi and I are doing behind the scenes, we're going to be recording a lot more videos that do explain the basic principles about NFTs, collectible sports cards, to help people gauge their interest and learn more about the space. And, our goal is to help you understand that space. And obviously any decisions you make on buying or selling are completely up to yours. We'll never give you guys financial advice, but we want to make sure to arm you with the right tools. So if you got some value out of the show, don't forget to hit the like button, leave a comment, share it, tell your mama about it. We love you. Subscribe, and we'll see you guys next week.